And it'd be really helpful if you could keep your Bibles open on Micah chapter 5, which we read earlier. As we get closer to Christmas, we're going to pause our series going through the book of Mark, looking at the life of Jesus. And we're going to remind ourselves of the truths that we celebrate at Christmas. And to do that this year, we're going to look back to the Old Testament, to some of the ancient promises that Jesus fulfills on the night that he was born. We're going to see that the Christmas story we know and love was promised long ago, and we'll begin to do that today by looking at Micah chapter 5. Now, many of the stories that we love have a hero in them. Someone that sweeps in at the last moment to save the day, and one that everyone else runs to when it all comes tumbling down. Our heroes in our stories look really different from each other. They sometimes look like King Arthur or Gandalf, these ancient warrior figures who rise at just the right time to push back the invading forces of darkness. Sometimes the heroes are a lot less dramatic, but still just as vital. Think of Christopher Robin from Winnie the Pooh, who rescues Pooh from his anxiety of being pursued by woozles when he points out he's following his own footsteps round and round the same tree. And we can tell that we love these heroes because we make heroes out of all sorts of people. Athletes like Keely Hodgkinson or the England women's rugby team are held up to be our heroes, those that have brought us victory and glory. We look to our political leaders and world movers to be our heroes, those that are going to fix the problems and sort everything out. Sometimes we look for ourselves to be our own hero. We run to ourselves and our abilities when it all comes tumbling down. Yet the reality is that even our most treasured heroes fail. Gandalf can't be everywhere all the time. Christopher Robin has to go home. Players miss the final penalty. Leaders make bad decisions. We need a hero, but our heroes fail. We need someone to run to when it all comes tumbling down, but even the best of us falter and fail. And it's into that world, where even the best fail, that Micah speaks, pointing us and God's people to a hero that will not fail us. Micah reminds God's people that the Lord will send his shepherd and king. The Lord will send his shepherd and king. And it begins reminding them that they are sieged, yet with a coming sovereign. Israel are sieged, yet with a coming sovereign. Micah is one of the people in the Bible whose job I am not jealous of. He speaks to Israel, God's chosen people, those that he's rescued from slavery and put in his promised land and lives among. But he speaks to them a message of judgment. Israel and her leaders have forsaken the Lord their God. They refuse to listen to him. And so Micah has to preach a message of judgment, that God will visit this rebellious people in justice. And that justice is going to look like being exiled as slaves in Babylon. It would not have been an easy message that they will be carried off as slaves unless they turn around. And yet there's tension in Micah's message, because as much as he preaches judgment, he also preaches hope. That yes, they will go into exile, yet one day they will know restoration. Israel will be restored, that many nations will come to the mountain of the Lord and know peace. There's a tension to Micah's message. There's coming judgment, yet one day you will know restoration as well. And we see that tension between judgment and rescue in verse 1 and 2, as we see that Israel will be sieged, yet they will have a coming sovereign. They are oppressed, yet with a coming king. Verse 1 is a call for Jerusalem, the capital city, to brace itself. Marshal your troops now, city of troops, for a siege is laid against us. Get ready, an invading force is coming. The gates of your city will be locked, no one will go in or out, and the invading army will camp around your walls, waiting to devour their prey. And in some way, this siege will be successful. In the second half of verse 1, Israel's ruler, the king, will be struck on the cheek with a rod. He will be defenseless, he will be stripped of dignity and embarrassed. There is coming judgment for Israel. But it's not a popular message for Micah to declare, and it seems that the people don't want to hear it. Back in chapter 2, some of people are saying to Micah, don't prophesy about these things. Disgrace will not overtake us. Be quiet, Micah. That won't happen. They don't want to hear the truth about judgment. They want to hear prosperity. Micah says in chapter 2, verse 11, if a liar and deceiver comes and says, I will prophesy for you plenty of wine and beer, that would be just a prophet for this people. Be quiet, Micah. These things won't happen. We won't be overrun. We're the Lord's people. I still remember the first COVID headlines in 2020, when it started to come out on the news that there was a big disease spreading around the world, and there could be a pandemic, there could be a lockdown. Perhaps in my naivety, I just thought, that won't happen. I'll just carry on doing life as I normally do. Things probably won't change too much, or it's just another selling headline. But it did happen. It was unbelievable to me, but I did spend many months sat at home. Well, God's message to his people here might seem unbelievable, like those COVID headlines. Surely that won't happen. Surely won't be overrun. Yet that judgment will come. They will be besieged. And yet that's not the only unbelievable thing that God promises here. For in verse 2, what he says next is just as unbelievable. That despite this siege, there is a coming king. There's a hero who's going to fix the problems, but he's coming from Bethlehem. There's a coming king, but he's coming from Bethlehem. Verse 2, but you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will rule Israel. The king is coming, but he's coming from Bethlehem, and it would have been unbelievable. As we just read in the passage, Bethlehem is not a major place. It's not a big city. It's not even a notable town. It's definitely not Jerusalem, where the ruling class lived and where anyone with any significance usually came from. And the Ephrathah bit is a bit like the district that it's in. It's almost its county. So it's the equivalent of saying, but you, Stockley in Wiltshire, out of you will come for me the ruler for my people. It's so insignificant, God has to remind the people exactly where it is in the country. And yet this isn't a random choice. God's not put a map of Israel up and thrown a dart and decided to send his king wherever the dart landed. No, this is entirely deliberate. As we read in verse 2, this coming king has origins of old, from ancient times, promises made long before this moment. A few hundred years before Micah, God had chosen a king for himself, and that king was David. He was a young shepherd boy, but the important thing we need to know is that he was from the town of Bethlehem. And God promised David that one day one of his great-great-grandchildren would be the chosen eternal king of God's people, that he would be the hero that we're all looking for. And so when God declares that he's going to send another king from Bethlehem, a king that he has chosen, the faithful Israelite who knows their history well, should start to get a bit excited. These promises are coming true. Yes, we may go through exile, but God will send his king. The son of David who will reign forever, who will be the hero that we need, is on the way, following the footsteps of David by coming from Bethlehem. The Lord will send his king, the hero that we're looking for. And 500 years after Micah made that promise from God, we know that these promises came true. As in Matthew chapter 2, as Matthew opens the New Testament telling us of the birth of Jesus, we read, the birth of Jesus born in Bethlehem. Here's what Matthew says. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least, for out of you will come a ruler for my people. Now, my school decided when I was in year 8 and year 9 that if you were good at French, that you should also have to do Latin as well. So I ended up doing Latin at school for 2 years. I don't really remember much. I spent most of my time confused about verb endings and verb forms. I remember we had got given translation homework. We were given a passage of Latin and we had to translate it into English. I wasn't very good at it. But early on in the year, our teacher showed us that right at the end of our textbook, there were those passages just in English. So the answers were in the back of the book. And I think it was quite unwise for him to show us that, because it just meant that we all just copied out the answers. What it did mean was there was no need to guess. I no longer had to guess what the Latin meant. I knew exactly. Or perhaps in a similar way, a few pages on from Micah, we see that we don't need to guess who this coming king was. We have the answers right before us. On that starry night in Bethlehem, as Mary holds in her arms her baby boy, the promise was fulfilled. The king is here. The promises of old to David have come true as Jesus sleeps among the hay. And yet this newborn king to whom shepherds and wise men run to adore has more ancient origins than just the promises to David. For Mary has given birth to a baby that is older than herself. He is older than Joseph, than the shepherds, than Micah, than David, than Abraham, than Noah, than Adam, for this is the Ancient of Days. God himself has come to be his people's king. The Ancient is here. The Creator has made himself part of his creation so that he might be that hero that we need. All the way back in Micah, God was promising that he would come to earth himself to be that son of David. The Lord will send his king. He has come to his people. But as we've seen in Micah, before Israel get to that history-changing moment, they must still go through exile. As we saw, there is tension of judgment and rescue, and that continues in verse 3 and 4, as we see that Israel will be stranded, yet with a coming shepherd. They will be stranded, yet with a coming shepherd. Verse 3, therefore Israel will be abandoned. For a time they will seemingly not know the blessings of God as they go to exile. They will feel stranded, or then they will have no true king of Israel from the day that exile begins until the nativity. Yet at that nativity, that is where the abandonment is broken. Verse 3, Israel will be abandoned until the time when she who is in labor bears a son. When that baby is born in Bethlehem, God's people know that he's beginning to restore them. He's beginning to gather his people in and be that hero that we need. And in verse 4, we see that he will be both king and shepherd. The Lord will send his king and shepherd. There are many things in life that are good for us, that bring us life, but when they are misused, they lead to real serious harm. Water is one of those things. It's good for us. It brings us life. We would shrivel up without it. Yet if you were to drink it constantly and in excessive amounts, it can bring you serious harm. It can damage your kidneys. It can hurt your health. Leadership is something else that falls into that category of something good that can bring us harm. Having leaders is a good thing. It's part of God's good design for the world. Yet when it's misused, it destroys rather than brings life. And the leaders of God's people who were in charge when Micah spoke were those sort of leaders. They were using their position of leadership to destroy rather than bring life. Back in chapter 3, Micah accuses them of being those who hate good and love evil, who tear the skin from my people and flesh from their bones, those who chop up the people of Israel like meat for the pan for them to consume. They build their kingdoms with bloodshed and wickedness. They judge for a bribe. God's people had leaders who took life rather than gave it, who manipulated rather than protected the people. And so when God promises that this new coming king will stand and shepherd the flock in verse 4, there will be some who start to cry tears of relief. The king that is coming is most comparable to a shepherd, one who protects, who cares for his flock, one whose leadership brings and sustains life. And not only is he kind, but he is strong and capable. He will stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord and in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. Those are his tools to keep his sheep safe, the power and authority of the Lord himself. The Lord will send his king and shepherd, a leader who brings life, not death. And the good news is that our shepherd king, who was born in Bethlehem all those years ago, is still our shepherd king. One who loves good and who hates evil. One who upholds justice and will not judge for a bribe. One who does all that is right. One who does not build his kingdom with the bloodshed of others, but founds his kingdom by shedding his own blood. One whose leadership does not tear the skin off his people, but instead has his own flesh torn so that they might be safe in him. As Jesus says in John chapter 10, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. That is what Jesus, the hero that we need, uses God's power and authority to do. To rescue for himself and the Father a people who will be eternally safe in his sheepfold. Our shepherd would give his life to gather in his lost sheep. Those like me who actually don't love what is good. Those like me who actually take advantage of others. Those like me who live for my glory and my kingdom, even if that means others get hurt in the process. Jesus gave his life, taking on all that corruptness, so that we might be welcome in his flock, that we might be eternally safe. Our shepherd king was born to go to the cross so that he might declare, rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep. The Lord will send his king and shepherd, the one whose leadership brings life and not death. Now, one thing that Evie told me of when she was younger is that she had a policy with sweets, was that she wanted them all now, or she wasn't interested in them at all. If she bought a packet of sweets from Tesco's when she was younger, her mum might say to her, you can have 5 now and 5 later. But Evie wasn't up for that. She wanted them all now, or she wasn't interested in them at all. There was no now and later, it was now or never. She said, I can tell you that, don't worry. Well, in God's kingdom, there is so often a now and a not yet. God's policy works far more on now and later rather than right here, right now, or not at all. Micah knew that. He said that judgment would be now and restoration would be later, and we know that too. Right now, if we've put our faith in Jesus, we are eternally safe in his sheepfold. He has brought us in, and he won't allow anything or anyone to steal us out of that sheepfold. Yet we're not with our shepherd physically yet. There's a now and a not yet. There's a now and a later. But the end of verse 4 seems to look forward to that day when that will be a reality. The day when the greatness of the shepherd will reach the ends of the earth. In one sense, that is already true. His greatness has gone to every corner of the globe as sheep from all pastures of life have been brought into his fold. But one day that truth will be fully realized. Our shepherd will return to gather his people in, to make them safe for eternity from any threat of pain, harm, sadness, manipulation, or oppression. There we will live with him forever in a restored paradise. So as we rest in our shepherd's strong and kind care, defined by the nail scars in his hands and feet, we remind ourselves of the same message that Micah did all those years ago, that the Lord will send his king and shepherd. Jesus will come again, and there he will restore us to himself. We began this morning by recognizing that we all love a hero. Someone that we can run to when crisis comes, when it all comes tumbling down, someone to pull us out from the rubble. And we've seen this morning that Micah reminds God's people who were about to approach a time of complete collapse, where everything they knew would be stripped away, that they have a hero. Not in a political leader, not in a man, but in God himself. And so the question this morning, whether we are following Jesus closely or backslidden, whether we've been in church 70 years or this is our 7th ever time, is who is your hero? Who is your shepherd? Who is the one that you run to when life comes tumbling down to pull you out of the rubble? There are many different people or things that we can raise as shepherds in this life. For some of us, it may be a husband or a wife or a partner, either that we have now or aspire to have one day. We might tell ourselves, as long as we're together, there's no obstacle we can't overcome. Maybe your shepherd hero is a political leader, one you think can restore justice, whose plans won't be stopped in the Commons or Lords, or a leader who won't be bought out. For others, it might be our parents. Mum always knows what to do. She'll be able to get me out, or at least if not out, then through it. Maybe it's even a church leader or pastor, someone with a large online following. They always know exactly what to say to make me feel a little bit better and for the anxiety to go away. Or maybe your shepherd is yourself. Your ability to spin all the plates at once without letting a single one crash to the floor. Now, none of those are necessarily bad things. We want good leaders for our country. We want wise people around us, but we are only setting ourselves up for hurt when we raise those people to be the shepherd that we need. Because at times they will fail. Their leadership will not always bring life, but will sometimes hurt. The best husband will at times fail to love compassionately. The best leader will have their plans frustrated. Parents will fail to be wise. We inevitably lose track of a spinning plate only to realize when it smashes on the floor behind us. There is only one whose leadership always brings life. There is only one who wields the power and authority of God always for the good of his sheep, and that's Jesus, our shepherd and our king. And so when life comes tumbling down, let us choose to run to him alone. When pain and disappointment are frequent guests in our house, let us call on our shepherd king, confident of his strong and kind care to lead us safely to himself, yet also confident he will not lead his sheep into any pasture that is not ultimately for their goods. When the state of our world scares us, let us call on our shepherd king, remembering that him and him alone is the one who will fix the problems and restore everything to the way it should be. When we realize just how lost we are, how far we have wandered looking for anything or anyone else to be our shepherd, let us call on our shepherd king, confident of his compassion to the lost, proven as his flesh was torn to bring us life. The words spoken by God through Micah have come true at that very first Christmas. The Lord has sent his king and shepherd, a baby boy born in the hay and Bethlehem. He is the hero that our hearts yearn for, the one we can choose to run to, who will never let us down. And as we rest in his care, let us preach the same message that Micah preached to us as well, that our Lord will send his king